Oregonian, the Foundation for Economic Education, SP, I know some of you are familiar with that, and Freedom's Journal magazine, among others. He's a frequent contributor to the Manhattan-based free market urban blog, Hip Hop Republican, and the Los Angeles-based urban publication called Street Motivation Magazine. In addition, he has been personally profiled in a number of publications and has been a guest on various news programs. In 2009, he spoke on judicial reform alongside Congressman Wu. He's the winner of Portland, Oregon's One Act Festival, a political activist, and studied international politics and film at Brigham Young University. So, guys, welcome, Loran Maxwell.
How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Well, I just wanted to say first thanks to youth entrepreneurs for having me out. I can't say how humbled I am. Can't express how humbled I am enough. I think the program that you guys have sets an example for the rest of the country. It's pretty amazing. We don't have anything like this where I'm from, at least. They're teaching some of the principles of free market economics to various demographics. And, so thank you to youth entrepreneurs for having me out. Second, I want to commend each and everybody in this room for taking the initiative, for demonstrating initiative and coming today. Because I don't know if I would have wanted to get up at 8:30, 8 in the morning during spring break, right, and come to talk about economics or hear economics when I was your age. So there's not a doubt in my mind that each of you in this room is capable of something extraordinary. There's not a doubt in my mind that each of you is capable of moving mountains, realizing your dreams, enriching those around you, your friends, your family, your community. Don't let the seemingly insurmountable odds and obstacles of life derail or detour you from what you know and I know you're capable of. Because greatness is inside each of you. But you have to awake it and unleash it, right? You have to embrace the moment and paint the world with your legacy. We live in a country that allows us to do that, but sometimes you have to be creative. And today I'm going to talk to you about an entire $10 billion industry that started from nothing but a few kids. No different from you guys. That wasn't their intention. They didn't say, we're going to have a $10 billion industry on our hands 10 years from now. But I'm going to explain to you how the market that we have here in the United States allowed that to happen, employing millions of people along the way, creating jobs and additional services and brands and products across the United States and the world, for that matter, that have made people's lives better and more pleasurable. So, let me see here if we get this. I guess this is forward. This is kind of our agenda for today. I want to briefly talk about free market principles, what they are and aren't. It might get a little bit philosophical. I'll try not to make it boring. But it's important that you understand what free market principles are and aren't before we move on to covering how those principles affect hip-hop. Second, we're going to talk about how free market principles embedded the birth of hip-hop. 3, how market principles assisted the dissemination of hip-hop. How market principles continue to sustain hip-hop, or continue to. 5, magistrates and the future of hip-hop. Magistrates meaning government, essentially. And just some quick closing remarks. So, let me ask you guys a question. Who here in, I don't know, in even the last month or sometime have downloaded the MP3 of hip-hop or the hip-hop song? Doesn't mean you have to have paid for it. Just download it. Okay, so most of you. All right, and how many of you have seen a hip-hop concert at some point in your life? Okay. All right. We're not the only ones, actually. 24 million people around the world, 24 million people listen to hip-hop each day. 500,000 people see hip-hop in concert live each month. I don't know, I want to block your way. And another note is I have some things I'm going to read. So if I'm standing over here, just ignore me, because this is all you really need to see. 28 million people purchase hip-hop in stores each year. Those are pretty astounding numbers, right, for something that just started with a group of kids. So here's some of the different products that hip-hop entails. We have dance, apparel, perfumes, jewelry, cinema, radio, television, books, magazines, beverages, probably even more than that. Those are just kind of the products off the top of my head. It's a $10 billion industry. You see here Run DMC on the side of an Adidas shoe. You see P. Diddy up there with his own brand of vodka. And then, of course, we see The Source, which is one of the first actual hip-hop magazine that there was. Here's some more hip-hop products to show you how far hip-hop's gone into the mainstream. We have 50 Cent, who has his own, I think it's an energy product. We have Snoop Dogg, who has dog sweaters. And Lil Wayne. Actually, Lil Wayne is really smart about this. Lil Wayne started a skateboarding brand. And not only that, think about what he did. He crossed into a completely new demographic. Skateboarders, rock and rollers, you know, typical kids who probably you wouldn't think probably listen to hip-hop. Although now people listen to everything pretty much. But he brought in a whole new fan base, and he's making lots of money from it. He took his opportunity as an MC, making money, to expand that and make more opportunities and employ people along the way. But hip-hop did not become the cultural phenomenon, the success that it is today overnight. It actually did so with the help of a very specific economic system, which abetted it and acted as a catalyst along the way. So, can anybody here guess maybe what that system is?
Free market. Free market.
Hey, it said that earlier in my presentation, didn't it? Okay. Well, everybody will get a little dollar just for being vigilant. Remind me, okay? So I'm all in for $1 for each of you. You're right. So it's a free market economy. So the free market not only helped shape the genre and American culture of hip hop, but it complemented the recording, mixing, and mastering process. It wasn't just you know, selling CDs or whatnot. It was the creation of a CD. How hip hop got into our living rooms, how hip hop got into our radios, how we go see hip hop live at concerts, and it assisted in discovering new listeners, and it helped listeners discover hip hop. And that kind of brings us to what the first thing is that we're going to talk about: free market principles, what they are and what they aren't. I have some things I want to read, so I'm going to stand over here. And we'll see here. So I'm going to let somebody else who's bigger than me, obviously, explain what a free market is. I'm going to have you hear a definition of a free market economy from economist Milton Friedman, and then we'll go from there.
The essence of a capitalist system in its pure form is that it is a system of cooperation without compulsion, of voluntary exchange, of free energy. Now, I hasten to add, no actual system conforms to that notion. In the actual world, you're always dealing with approximations, with more or less. In the actual world, you always have impediments and interferences to voluntary exchange. But the essential character of a capitalist system is that it relies on voluntary exchange, on your agreeing with me that you will buy something from me if I will pay you a certain amount for it. The essential notion is that both parties to the exchange must benefit. This was a great vision of Adam Smith in his Wealth of Nations. That individuals, each separately pursuing their own self-interest, could promote the social interest. Because you could get exchange between people on the basis of mutual benefit.
Okay, so you heard him mention Adam Smith, and we're going to talk a little bit about Adam Smith today and the role he's kind of played. I'm going to give you one more definition from another economist named Murray Rothbard. And he defined a free market economy as this. He said a free market is a summary term for an array of exchanges that take place in a society. Each voluntary agreement between two people or between groups of people represented by agents. These two individuals or agents exchange two economic goods, either tangible commodities or non-tangible services. Okay, So let's kind of sum up what Murray Rothbard and Milton Friedman just said, and I'm going to add some of my own notes just to make things clear for you. So, a free market economy is an economic system governed by voluntary exchange. So if you see something, well, who here wants to give me an example of voluntary exchange? Does anyone have an example of voluntary exchange? Who here bought breakfast this morning? You bought breakfast this morning. Did anybody force you to buy breakfast? No? You bought breakfast because you were hungry, right? Okay. And they served you breakfast because you paid them, right? It was a voluntary transaction. So that's an example of a voluntary exchange on an economic level. It's really, really basic economic exchange. That's what a free market is. Consenting adults engaging in consensual capitalist acts, as one person liked to put it. I forget who it was that put it that way. In a free market, anybody is welcome to compete or even complement existing ideas or products. There's no reason why you can't take a product that's already out there and make it better. Think about sweatshirts and jackets, right? There's not just one type of sweatshirt or jacket. Some are better than others. You know, somewhere along the line, a company came along and said, hey, I'm going to add a hood to a sweatshirt and make it a hoodie. It made it better. So there's no reason you can't complement existing products. Success and failure is determined by consumers and supply and demand, never by government coercion or favoritism. Now, I want to do a couple side notes here, because there's always going to be people who want to over-philosophize. So, we technically live in a mixed economy, not a free market economy, because government regulations and intervention exist. But I'm going to explain to you why I'm using the term free market and how that's. Free market and capitalism are often used interchangeably, but are not always the same thing. But we're going to use them as the same thing today. And for the most part, the average person refers to them as the same thing. Unless you're going to be an economist down the road or a philosopher, there's not a point in worrying too much about the differences between the two right now. So despite not wholly living in a free market economy, there are still many vital free market concepts in play today. It's what has built the United States essentially and made it the economic powerhouse that it is. So because the U.S. economy is so complicated and because so many key free market concepts are still in play, we're going to use the term free market today for the sake of simplicity. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear in case you guys ever hear something down the road and you wonder why I use the term free market. That's why. That's kind of a little bit of history behind that. So why is a free market vital? Why does it matter if we have a free market? Well, if you guys have never heard of Thomas Sowell, you should check him out. He's a brilliant economist. He's a good guy. He's one of my heroes. But one of the vital concepts of the free market is they promote choice. He said the following when comparing a free market system to other types of economic systems. He said, the difference is that one system involves each individual making choices for himself or herself, while the other system involves a smaller number of people making choices for others. So a free market system promotes choice. Nobody's forcing you to buy anything. Nobody's forcing you, or no one's selling anything, you anything against your will. It's all choice. And I'll get in a little bit later about how free markets breed different options. Free markets also promote peace. Frederick Bastiat said, when goods do not cross borders, soldiers will. Well, what did he mean about this? Well, what's that? Go ahead. I can't hear you. What's this? Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that I get what you're saying, and you're right. Economics is essentially the allocation of scarce resources, right? You guys learned that yet? It's allocating resources that are limited. So, is it more advantageous for a society to allocate those scarce resources by means of consent or coercion, right? By means of an army or a consensus? Well, the answer is, of course, consensus. No economy or civilized society can sustain prosperity in a state of perpetual warfare. That's just a fact. You can't do it. It's not good for economies. So when you have free trade going across borders, nations are generally inclined not to go to war because it hurts them economically. You might have a short-term boom when you go to war, but long-term, it really hurts you. So, free markets promote political freedom. If you have a government that controls industries, say the t-shirt industry, and you want to make a t-shirt out of your home and sell it, and it's critical of the government, and you can't do it because they own that T-shirt business. That's kind of just a very simple look at it. So that's why Milton Friedman, he believed that free markets promoted political freedom. There's countries out there that are blending the two, and that's kind of another conversation. But in general, that's another side effect of free markets and what they promote. Free markets promote property rights. This is kind of a complicated quote, but in general, what Adam Smith believed is your body is your property. So anything that emanates from your property, which is your body, is also yours, meaning your labor. If you're going into work, working 8, 10, 12 hours a day, that labor is yours. You're agreeing to work for a paycheck in exchange for a paycheck, right? They're going to give you a paycheck in exchange for your labor. So free markets promote property rights. You have the right to use your labor any way you want. So, who was Adam Smith? Cookies are done. And Adam Smith was a Scottish philosopher. Lived between 1723 and 1790, and he was best known as the author of The Wealth of Nations. And interesting side note, The Wealth of Nations actually came out in 1776, the same year as the Revolution. It was just kind of one of those things that have made the book that much more popular. Now, Adam Smith advocated free trade on a lot of levels. He wasn't perfect. There's going to be people who pick him apart and understand this, but I'm going to tell you why we are using some of his concepts today, because he's essentially synonymous with free markets. Ludwig von Mises was another economist. He was an Austrian economist, and he said the following about Adam Smith. He said, Smith's books did not lay the foundation stone, but the keystone of a marvelous system of ideas. Their eminence is to be seen precisely in the fact that they integrated the main body of these ideas into a systematic whole. These presented the essence of the ideology of freedom, individualism, and prosperity, with admirable logical clarity and in impeccable literary form. So essentially, Wealth of Nations was a work of aggregation. When Robert Cowdery invented, or the dictionary, the first American English dictionary, he didn't invent all the words that were in the dictionary. But he kind of brought them all together in one place where people can go to one source. Well, that's kind of what Adam Smith did. There were lots of people before him that came up with different economic ideas, but he kind of took them all and put them into one place where he could go. And that's why he's important. That's the role he plays. Not that he invented every concept that he was a proponent of. So there's two key concepts that have played a role in the growth and success of hip-hop that can be found in The Wealth of Nations and lots of Adam Smith's writings. And I've kind of summed up the two right here. One, market competition ensures a fall in prices and a rise in quality. So competition, I highlighted that word. So keep an eye out for how many times competition shows up. Second, the division of labor enables manufacturers to be more productive. So this kind of brings us to what we wanted to talk about here today, which is the market principles, how they embedded the birth of hip-hop. So the roots of hip-hop. Now, I could probably do an entire presentation on the exact point A to point B of hip-hop, but I can't do that today because it's complicated. So I'm going to kind of sum over it and then go from there. But though the spoken word, the roots of spoken word hip-hop music can be found in African American music and jazz, and can ultimately be traced to African music, the venture into the commercialization of the spoken word was uniquely American. This free market venture, although they didn't see it as a free market venture at the time, first began 35 years ago in the northernmost borough of New York City with a handful of bored, mostly lower income youth improvising lyrics over funk and soul music generated by DJs at block parties. Now, DJ Kohler was one of these DJs. He's actually credited with being the godfather. Some people cite his very apartment that he lived in as the birth of hip-hop because he used to bring people there and have dance parties. And it spread throughout the block, spread throughout the city, spread throughout the state. We'll get into that later. But basically what he'd do is he'd sample music and update it with his own unique twist. Take music that was already out there and add his own twist to it. And that was not new. It's something actually that lots of blues, jazz, and rock and roll musicians had also done a decade prior, and even a decade before that prior. So it's very much in the spirit of music that somebody would take something and remake it. I'll give you a couple quick examples. Otis Rush, awesome blues player. If anybody likes blues, you should check him out. He wrote a song called I Can't Quit You Baby. It was a nice, relaxed kind of blues song. It was really good. Well, I remember Led Zeppelin came along and took it and made it really heavy. They made it totally just